There's a moment we all face, a silent psychological crossroads that dictates the outcome of countless social interactions. A moment when a remark, a criticism, or a subtle jab lands squarely on us. In that split second, a million thoughts race through our minds. We feel a profound, almost involuntary urge to correct the record, to justify ourselves, to prove our innocence. It's a reflex, a habit so deeply ingrained in us since childhood that it feels like instinct. We're taught if we just explain ourselves enough, we'll be vindicated. But what if that instinct is not a path to freedom, but a meticulously constructed trap? Machiavelli, the master strategist who saw human nature with a chilling clarity, understood something fundamental about this dynamic that most of us are blind to. He saw that the very act of defending yourself is a profound act of submission. When you rush to explain, to justify, to win an argument, you are, in effect, validating the other person's right to judge you. You're stepping onto their battlefield, accepting their rules of engagement, and ceding control of the narrative before the first shot is even fired. You might think you're fighting for your reputation, but you are actually handing over the reins, confirming that their opinion holds enough weight to warrant your emotional and intellectual labor. Think about it. Who feels the compulsive need to constantly explain themselves? The person in a position of quiet, unshakable authority, or the one trying to prove their worth? The truly powerful individual does not feel the need to justify their every move. Their position, their actions, their very presence speak for them. Machiavelli knew that true power isn't about being understood. It's about being untouchable. The moment you feel the need to justify your actions, you reveal a vulnerability, a crack in your armor. And in the ruthless world of perception, vulnerability isn't seen as a sign of humanity. It's seen as an opening for attack. It's a signal that your self-worth is tied to external validation, and an astute opponent will use that against you without a second thought. This isn't about being right or wrong. It's about a deeper, more primal conflict over who controls the frame. The person who speaks first, who jumps to defend, often loses control of that frame. They may be factually and morally correct, but in the eyes of an observer, they appear weak because only the weak rush to explain. The strong, as Machiavelli would say, let the silence burn. They understand that stillness is a weapon, a form of communication far more powerful than words. When you don't react, you force others to fill the void, and their assumptions will almost always inflate your power. That silence becomes a question in their minds. What is he thinking? Why isn't he responding? Is he above this? The void you create becomes a canvas for their own insecurities and respect for your composure. Consider a simple accusation. You're so arrogant. The natural, untrained response is, no, I'm not. I'm passionate about my work and I stand by it. And you launch into a series of explanations. But what have you accomplished? You've confirmed that their words have an effect on you. You've proven you care what they think, and in doing so, you've handed them a measure of control. You've validated their judgment by even addressing it. Machiavelli saw this coming. He knew that when you give up your mystery, you give up your most powerful asset. The most powerful people aren't always the loudest or the most liked. They are the ones who wield silence like a weapon, the ones who make you second-guess yourself just by their stillness. They live in a world where explanations are for the vulnerable, and their very existence is the only defense they need. So, how do you break free from this pattern? The first step is to recognize the trap. When you feel that urge to defend yourself, pause. Don't let your emotions take the wheel. Instead of seeking clarity, seek control. You don't need to be understood to be powerful. You need to be unreadable and unpredictable. Machiavelli believed in turning the accusation into a mirror. When someone throws a jab, you don't fight it. You let it hang in the air untouched. You let their attack die in the echo of its own weakness. In a room, when someone tries to undermine you, the crowd isn't just watching the accusation. They're watching your response. Your calm, total stillness in that moment speaks volumes. It forces everyone in the room to question the accuser. Why didn't he react? Does he know something we don't? Is he above this? Did that attack just make him stronger? You've just flipped the entire social frame. Silence, when delivered with presence, is a justification more profound than any explanation. Machiavelli knew that power isn't what you say, but what people believe you could say, yet choose not to. There's an even colder, more advanced move. Sometimes you don't just ignore the accusation, you invert it. When someone calls you manipulative, you might smile and respond with detached amusement. If that's how you see it, they were hoping for a fight for you to squirm. Instead, they're left holding their own weapon, scrambling and wondering if they've overstepped. You've taken their negative energy and made them carry it without lifting a finger. This is the power of turning their own force against them. It makes them feel small without you doing a thing. The person who expected a reaction finds themselves exposed as the one begging for attention. And you become something far more powerful than innocent. You become untouchable. Machiavelli understood that words aren't just for clarifying truth. They can also be used to obscure it. When someone attacks you, they want to drown you in emotional explanation because the more you explain, the less certain you appear. By letting them fill the silence, they often overplay their hand, looking desperate and unstable, while you remain calm and under judgment. This approach creates a powerful paradox. The more you remain silent, the more they talk, exposing their own weaknesses and emotional instability to the crowd. The crowd, in turn, isn't just listening to what's being said. They are watching who is calm and who is rattled. This is social power, and it doesn't come from being right, but from being untouchable. This is why Machiavelli would tell you to lean back and wait when faced with an accusation, rather than leaning forward to explain. A calm, even slightly amused, demeanor turns the tables, making the accuser perform and putting them under pressure. The silent confidence you project becomes an accusation without words. There is a principle that extends to all areas of life, from business to personal relationships. In a business meeting, when someone subtly undermines you, they're looking for a reaction. The average person leans forward, explaining and justifying. But the Machiavellian operator leans back, waits, and perhaps offers a calm redirect. Let's hear your strategy, then. Suddenly, the attacker is under pressure, being evaluated, and the room flips. In romantic or personal relationships, the dynamic is even more dangerous. When a partner says, "You don't care about me anymore," the typical response is panic and a flood of reassurances. But the Machiavellian approach is different. You let the accusation hang, and then respond with a grounded, short phrase. "That's not how I see it." No explanation, no justification, just a statement of your reality. This makes them question their own emotional tone because you held power over the most important thing, the emotional tempo of the conversation. There is an even more advanced tactic, colder still: disappearing. When someone insults you, you don't just not reply, you don't even acknowledge them. Let your absence sit like a mirror, forcing them to sit in the silence of being ignored. This breaks people because it denies them the emotional validation they crave, even in conflict. They'll try to bait a reaction, but with every attempt, they look weaker and more unhinged, all while you remain perfectly still. Machiavelli would say you win not by proving a point, but by letting them destroy themselves trying to get a reaction from you. But the elite move is to not just remain still, but to turn their accusation into a sign of their own weakness. When someone calls you arrogant, you might respond, "Strange that confidence makes people so uncomfortable." They say you're manipulative. Only people who can't be influenced say that. You aren't denying the accusation. You're making it their insecurity. It's a power judo throw, using their emotional force to trigger their public collapse. Machiavelli would call this the turn of the blade. Don't meet the sword with a shield. Let the attacker fall on his own blade. The true strategist never plays the game of chasing innocence, because Machiavelli knew that the moment you do, you admit guilt, putting them under pressure. The silent confidence you project becomes an accusation without words. The world tells you to prove yourself, to prove you're right, to prove you're not what they say you are. This is a constant, exhausting demand that starts in the schoolyard and follows us into every boardroom and social media feed. We're taught that our value is tied to our ability to explain our innocence, to show our good intentions, to win the court of public opinion. But Machiavelli would smirk at this. He saw it not as a path to vindication, but as a trap, a game designed to bleed you dry. The second you try to prove anything, you've validated their judgment, and when you hand them that validation, you hand them your leash. The Machiavellian approach is the opposite. To pause, hold a moment of silence, and then, if necessary, offer a calm, dismissive phrase like, "Interesting take," or "You seem emotional today." This lack of reaction tells the room that they, not you, are the ones under judgment. It shifts the entire weight of the moment back onto the accuser, forcing them to justify their own emotional state. You haven't denied their claim, and you haven't validated it. You have simply made it irrelevant to your reality. You've become the silent judge in a court you were never supposed to be on trial in. This extends to the digital world, where people are constantly trying to bait you into reacting, into a spiral of explanations and justifications. Machiavelli would tell you that in the court of public opinion, silence speaks guilt, unless your silence commands fear. Most people think that staying quiet means you have something to hide. But a strategic silence is a different beast entirely. Instead of defending, you reframe the accusation. When they say you're toxic, you might post, "People always call you dangerous when they can't control you." You've just turned the accusation into a badge of power, a testament to your unassailability. They were hoping for an emotional response, a frantic defense, a flurry of explanations. They were hoping for a show they could win. Instead, you gave them nothing, and then you used their own words to elevate your status. Now, they look bitter and petty, while you look unbothered and unfazed. You've denied them the very emotional supply they were seeking. Machiavelli saw this coming. He knew that the most effective way to win a war of perception is not to fight the enemy on their terms, but to change the battlefield entirely. There are 3 key tools to remember, each more powerful than any explanation you could ever offer. Silence. This is the default. It leaves the accuser completely exposed, forcing them to fill the void. The tension they create with their words becomes their own burden to carry. It denies them the satisfaction of a fight, and it makes everyone else in the room, physical or digital, wonder why you aren't reacting. Your calm becomes their chaos. Deflection. This is about reframing the narrative without acknowledging the jab. It's a subtle redirect that makes the other person's attack seem off-topic or irrelevant. When someone tries to corner you, you change the subject with a simple, grounded statement that reasserts control. This isn't about being rude. It's about a subtle, powerful refusal to play their game. Precision cuts. These are short, sharp truths that end the game immediately, like, confidence upsets the insecure, in response to "you're full of yourself." These aren't defenses. They're status assertions that say, "You can't touch me." They are statements so potent that they make the accuser's attack look like a confession of their own weakness. Machiavelli never begged to be seen as good. He dared people to see him as bad and walk taller for it. When you consistently stop defending yourself, something strange happens. Your enemies become unhinged. They expected a fight, but they're swinging at smoke. They escalate, expose their insecurity, and perform their own collapse. Machiavelli's endgame wasn't to destroy his enemies, but to let their obsession with him destroy them. They become consumed with a person who isn't even paying them any mind. This is the ultimate power move. The misunderstood man has mystery, while the predictable man is easy to manipulate. People who are calmly misunderstood are feared, and as Machiavelli would say, it is better to be feared than to be loved. You become a person with an inner world so secure that external opinions simply cannot penetrate it. Your reputation doesn't have to be good. It needs to be strong. A strong reputation isn't about being liked. It's about being someone no one dares move against casually. When you never defend yourself, your reputation becomes about what people fear you'll do next. Your silence itself becomes a decision, a strategic move that makes people fill in the blanks, and they almost always fill them in with a more powerful version of you than you could ever project. The final evolution is not silence, but aura. A presence so composed, so unassailable, that accusations simply evaporate on contact. This is the difference between a person who is simply strong and a person who is an immovable force. Machiavelli didn't care about being good. He cared about being in control. And the person who never defends is always in control of perception. The paradox is that the more you explain yourself, the more alone you look. You appear as an isolated person fighting a lonely battle for validation. But if you remain calm and unfazed, people will start to feel the urge to defend you. They will become your shield. And as Machiavelli would say, what's better than defending yourself is letting others do it for you. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about ending it before it starts. When you no longer defend yourself, people stop seeing you as someone who needs to be put on trial. You've moved beyond the court of public approval. Machiavelli would say you don't live in defense. You live in definition. You define your image, your tone, your silence. You're not resisting anymore, you're commanding. And that's when the room shifts. Your enemies grow quieter, your name carries weight, not because you fought for it, but because you never explained it.